We are officially on. Oh my
Huge.
goodness.
This is great.
This is going to be this is the weirdest episode that we're going to be doing. We're outside right now.
I'm
It's
glad to be a part of it.
9:30. I have I have a lot of my friends around here. My usual team isn't here, so I have my friends monitoring. We got Nathan, we got Lauren, we got Nate, we got Zach, and we obviously have you, Hudson.
Yes,
And then
sir.
we've got some more people coming. And what a fun time. But Hudson, thank you for coming on the podcast. And usually my intro is welcome back to the Center Podcast. And today is going to be a weird episode. So
Yeah.
we literally were just playing basketball, playing baseball, playing football. We were doing all these crazy things. And now we're sitting in the backyard with this light that is drawing a lot of insects too. And we're just sitting outside in the backyard.
Yeah.
And we're just going to talk about honestly anything,
Yeah.
anything and everything, because we
Anything and everything.
we haven't had a lot of time to sit down and talk, mostly because this is not the usual day that I record.
Mhm.
I am pre-recording multiple episodes because I'm going to be out of town a lot this summer,
Yeah.
so I just need to pre-record. And you were the first person that we're pre-recording, and so obviously for the audience and everyone watching and listening, the podcast is going to look different over the next couple months because I'm going to be on the road. We're going to be doing stuff like this. I'm actually interviewing someone in Washington, so it's going to be great. And it looks like my dad's thinking about letting the dogs out. You can let them out. It's fine. Well, yeah, they'd probably hit the wires.
Yeah. Maybe not. Not a great idea.
uh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, oh, okay, Dad. Yep, you do that. I guess they're not going to come out anyway. So
Distraction.
to talk about what we're going to talk about, I mean, what do you think the Lord's been putting on your heart recently that you want to talk about? I knew that you mentioned like loneliness and stuff, and that
Mhm.
you wanted to kind of hit on that topic.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we talked about that a little bit Sunday. So that was something I did want to talk about as well. And then, I mean, kind of leads up into just my story, at least for me. So, yeah, I mean, we can totally talk about that. But if there's something else that God's placed on your heart, we can totally talk about that as
I
well.
would love to
because-
hear your story.
I mean, yeah, I guess we could go there. So,
Let's do
hi,
it.
everybody. I'm Hudson. I'm one of Garth's friends from small group. We met. Was it last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, last year. Came to college small group. Met this amazing man. Love him. Love him so much.
Thank you, man.
He's awesome. So, but yeah. I mean, I guess for me, just starting my story. I mean, I grew up Christian household. Like, I feel like that's a lot of people right now. I mean, that I've met is that we just grew up in the Bible Belt, Texas, and then all the way up in here, like South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee.
Yeah.
But yeah, so grew up in that, grew up around the church, grew up like serving, grew up just in general, like just being around the word, being around God and just hearing about him all the time. So like my faith's kind of built up in that and just kind of repetition. So for me, it's like, it's always been a part of me. Like
Yeah.
it's been always been my identity has been in Christ and being a Christian, all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But we moved around a lot because my dad's job, like he was in retail and whenever we got a promotion, we would always pack up and move. And
Yeah.
we never stayed in the same place more than like 2 years, maybe less. So for me, community was hard to make because whenever we move, like obviously it's like new environment, new places.
Right.
And so making those friends was important. I was like, okay, we got to get plugged in and we tried to do that. And then sometimes it would fail. I wouldn't get in with around bad people and like, it wouldn't be great. Or I just couldn't make friends.
Right.
Was another hard thing. And then, yeah, another thing that made it hard was that we were homeschooled.
Mm.
So what ended up happening was that, yes, I love my family, love them so much. And so we grew closer as a family because we moved around a lot. It was just us. So love my brother. We've been super close. Same thing with my sister as well. Like that's just been us for sure. We moved around at least 7, 8 times.
Wow.
For sure.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Like different houses and then different states, like 4 different states, but moved to Texas twice. So it's been crazy for sure. And
Wow.
then, yeah, I mean, when in each place, I felt like every time we would almost settle down, it would be like we're called to move somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And so every time I would kind of like get in this like stage of like, oh, I thought I had the community, but now I'm leaving that community again.
Right.
So, I mean, and the main one was Texas. Like Texas, when we moved back there and like finally got starting to get established there, like in my church, I was doing internships. I was part of the leadership team at our church. I was making friends in my small group, and we were told, my dad told me, we're not going to move ever again. Like, we don't have to worry about that. I was like, awesome. This is great. I got my first girlfriend, just like started dating. I was like, awesome. This is amazing. We're doing great. 2020,
2020
we get COVID.
hit hard.
So shut down. Everything shut down. I actually started going to school, made friends
Nice.
and all that kind of stuff. And it's like I was on the running team. I was doing great. I made the soccer team. Like I was flourishing. 2020 hit, COVID hit, everything shut down. I was like, at first it was awesome because like, oh, get a break from school. This is
Right.
great. But then it slowly but surely I was like, I need community. Like I need people to be around me.
Yeah.
And at that time, one of my best friends, he had moved away for a while and he moved back closer to me. And I was like, awesome. So we started working out. We started getting like doing coffees and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Then during like lockdown, all that kind of stuff, my dad gets a call from his new work and they tell him you're moving to Nashville.
Man.
And he broke the news to us. And I just remember going to my room and just being so angry with God in that moment. Cause I was like, I'm finally having community.
Yeah.
I've been craving this for forever. I have never had this before. Why are you taking this away from me?
Right.
And that's like, I remember just having that like just anger and frustration towards him throughout the whole moving here. And at first I hated it, like hated it here. I was like, I'm not making any friends. Like there's like, even the church, like we went to the city students and at that time they weren't doing small groups. They were just doing like, you come in, sit down, listen to whatever they're saying and then do a game or whatever. And I hated that because there was no connection, nothing like that. And so there were many times where I'd be in my car, I would come home, like my siblings would go inside and I would just be crying and I'm never really emotional. That's the other thing. I'm not an emotional person. So when those things were happening, I was like, it was the worst. Then at that time, went through a whole breakup stage where it was just awful and it was just like ripping me. And I was like, this is like, God, why are you pulling me through this? Why are you taking me through this?
Yeah.
And I was like, at least I still have my best friend, right? But then that was taken away from me too, over just a simple argument, over just theology and that kind of stuff. And it was just like, for me, I'm like, I entered the summer of 2021 now, completely alone.
Yeah.
Like I did make friends here through like CC and like co-ops, but they weren't like sticking friends for me. And people I could go to and confide in and all that kind of stuff. So it was just, I was going to this time, I was like, I have nobody.
Yeah.
And then news surprise in July, I found out I'd graduated. And I was like, so now I'm moving on to a new stage in life. I still have nobody. And so this is year one. That was year one of Nashville. And then me going into year two, I'm like, I don't know I don't know what God has for me anymore.
Right.
Like if he's taking away all this community, I guess I'm not supposed to have it. Then my mom's like, you should go to a college group. And I was like, I don't want to. At that point, I was like, I don't want to make this connection because it's always failed for me. I'm like, I'm not going to do it. I don't want to do it. She forced me to do it. She's like, you're going to go do it. Like, you're not staying here tonight. You're going out. I'm like, fine, whatever. Sure, whatever. I'm not going to like it. I go out and I'm just awkward. I'm like, I show up to the house and it's like one of the like the last parties that they have for the college group.
Yeah.
And I'm like, kind of like, I don't know anybody. I'm just kind of vibing there. I meet one of the college pastor and introduced me to, well, I can name names, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Caleb.
Yeah.
Introduced me to Caleb. And I was like, oh, he's awkward. And man, I thought he was weird. At first I was like, I don't know about him.
Yeah.
But he became like my greatest friend. And he helped me through a lot during that time. Like we would go out and I was like, he lives in my neighborhood. I'm like, wow, what crazy turn of events. So we would go out, we do fun things. We would have late night talks. Like we would have all the things. Then I'm going to start going to my college. And I was like, this is awful. Like it feels the community's dead here. There's no, like, you can't connect with anybody. No one wants to talk to you. And I'm like, okay. And I told Caleb that. He's like, well, come to my small group. I'm like, okay, I'll try it. I'll try it out. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And when I went, that's where I found like my community. Like that's where I found like the second family that I've been craving for. And it has only gotten better since then. Like
absolutely.
God has completely blessed me with it and way more than I could ever thought or imagined. So
right. Yeah, that's so cool to hear. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, for sure.
I think I moved here as well, and I was here for like 6 months. I moved here actually in 2020 for only like 6 months because I moved here and then COVID hit. And during that time, obviously, I didn't meet anybody. I didn't get to see anything because we were staying with my grandparents and I couldn't go out. And I came to the conclusion that Franklin, Tennessee just wasn't for me.
Yeah.
So I moved back to Seattle in about like June, July-ish of 2020. And I ended up, you know, working as a truck driver. I ended up living on my own for the first time, doing these things. And I remember December of 2020, I realized, oh man, like God is calling me to Tennessee, and I don't know why, but I feel like I need to, and I have family there, so I might as well.
Yeah.
So I moved here in 2021, and that's what I tell people. I usually just tell people I moved here in 2021 because 2020 I wasn't really around. I was just in a house for 6 months, and then I moved away. So I moved here in 2021. Very similar to you. Didn't have community for a while. I spent a lot of time in my room and didn't want to go out, didn't want to meet people. I just worked a lot, and it wasn't until I want to say it wasn't until I think almost the summer is when I really got like connected with
Yeah.
some people. It was the late summer, like August, and that's when I started really going to the college group, just like you, and that was just what changed it all for me. It's when I also entered into a relationship and just met my community. And obviously a lot has changed. If you've heard my story, a lot has changed since then, and where I'm at today is much different.
Oh, yeah.
However, that was the start, and I think that was God pushing me up, kind of pushing me into that. But I tried to do the whole, move, didn't meet anybody, went back to where I was from, tried to hang out with the same old people that I used to, didn't vibe the same, and I mean, I love those people, but it was just different. And I think God was really trying to get me to be here. And I truly don't think he wanted me to move back to Seattle. I think that was definitely my own decision. But being lonely, not having community can be really difficult, obviously.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of what kind of advice could we give to someone who is experiencing that loneliness and they're not sure what to do about it.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was taking the opportunities where you get them, because there were times where I was like, no, I don't want to do that. Like I was telling you, like,
Right.
my mom literally forced me to go to the college group. I was like, no, I don't want to do it. And she's like, you're going to do it.
Yeah.
So when opportunities do present itself, you should take them. Like if you are in that lonely spot and you're feeling like isolated and all that kind of stuff, that's when you lean in to like community. Like a good Christian community is usually what happened for me. It's like whenever I did feel that loneliness, it's like I have to lean into somewhere, whether it be on my family or whether it be my youth group or what like that kind of stuff. So that would be kind of like, I guess, some advice, but I know that sometimes that can't even happen. Like people are just like, I like have the anxieties and all that kind of stuff too. So
Right. Yeah.
there's
One piece of advice that I got from my older cousin when I became an adult was say yes to a lot of things. And obviously there are obvious things that you should be saying no to, but when it comes to hangouts, when it comes to events with people, just say yes. Even if it's out of your comfort zone, even if it's not something that you would normally do or you don't feel like doing it, just do it and say yes. And that, I do believe this wholeheartedly. And as I've grown in my faith, I've noticed that God calls us to do a lot of the uncomfortable things, and he likes taking us out of our comfort zone because that's where he grows us.
Oh yeah.
If we were just comfortable all the time, nothing would work out. We wouldn't grow. We would just be staying the same, living our own comfortable lives. That's what I did for the 6 months that I moved here in 2021. I was like, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to be comfortable with my family. And it didn't grow me at all. And Evan and I talked about this on the last episode that, I mean, community is so special, and what we have here is just super, super special, and it's a gift from God is what it is.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's what I would give to anyone that's listening or watching, is that you got to get involved in a community. And even if it doesn't click the first time, like we mentioned Caleb, I met him over the summer at a pool party, and we didn't even vibe that much. I mean, I met you too, but we didn't even vibe that much. I was really more isolated, but everyone was trying, and they were telling me, hey, let's meet up for coffee. Let's do this. And I remember just being really closed off, and I was like, I'm good.
Yeah.
Yet now we're a year and a half later, I look around and I realize, oh yeah, like that was very special, and it's very crucial that I entered into those moments.
Mhm.
Can we just give a huge shout out to Nate right now?
Yes. No, for
So
sure. He's gonna light up.
we are getting these gusts of wind, and Nate is keeping this light up. It's this
He's
like
doing great.
$50 light that I bought a while ago, and
Doing great, Nate. Great job. Keep
I'm
it up.
also just looking around to see where's
Where did everyone else go? Yeah. They left.
they left.
They just left.
Oh, all right. Right. Yeah, they're gone.
Left.
They're gone. It's fine.
Fair enough.
Our great
Definitely
community is gone.
Great community. They have abandoned us actually now, ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen, and that is how you lose community. You do a podcast and invite everyone to watch, and then it just gets boring and they leave. Which
exactly.
I get. I can
Yeah.
understand.
I mean, yeah, it's true. One other advice I would say is that it doesn't last forever.
True.
You may think that it is going to last forever and you're never going to get out, but that is not the case.
Mhm.
Like, it takes time. Sometimes it does take a minute because, like you said, sometimes you don't click the first time, but you will find community. You're going to find your people. You're going to find the people that are going to lift you up. That are going to speak life into you. That are going to pour like into you because God wants us to have community. Like, I know that
Mhm.
for sure.
Oh, 100%.
Like 100%, like he does want that for us. So
Yeah.
you may be in that dark place where you're like, I don't think I should have a community, or I don't think that God wants this for me. But that's not true. Like
Yeah.
that's definitely from the devil telling you like, hey, you don't need it. You're better off. Another thing is you're better off alone. Like
Right.
you're not.
It's the last thing you
That's the
want.
last thing you want. Like
Yeah.
that's something my dad was telling me today. Actually, he was like, the times where you feel alone and like just disheartened is the time where you lean into community the most.
Mm.
So, and I'm like, that's so true though. Like
Yeah.
because I think about times in my life, I'm like, where I feel sad, where I'm feeling depressed, and I'm feeling like I can do it by myself, and I'll go by myself. I'm like, this sucks.
Yeah.
Like this is the worst. Like
Right.
this is not helping me. But then when I go into the people that I love, I can trust, is 100 times better.
Yeah, and
So-
that's one thing I've been learning is that oftentimes when we think of God, at least me, when I first started becoming a Christian and actually walking into my own faith, not just my parents' faith and what I grew up with, but my own faith, I realized that God doesn't just appear to you in his true form,
Right.
because turns out it'll kill you. But
Moses
God
would've died.
doesn't just appear like that. Like God works in different ways, and he works in ways that we don't understand and that we don't comprehend, and we kind of question sometimes, like, God, why do you move in this way? Why don't you just do this? Why don't you just do this? And it's like
True.
you're trying to describe God in a way that he's not. I mean, he can do anything that he wants, but he's not your puppet and you can't tell him what to do. And going back to my point is that one thing that I've been learning as I've been growing in my faith is that God works a lot through people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I've been experiencing. And when you talk about how important that community is, it's so true, because not only are they there for you and that God has placed them in your life, but God is able to work through them to speak over you and to speak truth to you. And I think a lot of times, at least for me, I underestimate that, where someone's speaking over me and it's like, yeah, like, thank you for saying that. But sometimes you should sit with it and think to yourself, is this something that they're saying, or is this something that God is trying to say through them to me? Like, do I need to listen up here, you know?
Yeah, exactly. That's what God spoke through the prophets. Like
Mhm.
in the Bible, sometimes he didn't speak to the Israelites directly. He would go through the prophets, like, this is my word to you guys. And that's why we have the Bible, because that's his word to us.
Mhm.
So it's like, yeah, sometimes you'll get those moments where you hear from him. You're like, oh my gosh, like this is from God. But there's other times where it's like he's speaking through other people to you. And you might get offended by it because you're like, wow, you're calling me out because of this.
True.
But then you're like, if, like you said, sometimes you got to sit with it. You're like, dang, no, you're right. Like, yeah.
Sorry, they're back.
No.
I was like, where'd my friends go? Okay, there's a lot of big bugs around here now. That there's big lights on here.
But yeah. No.
Yeah, that's really good. And also, if it's speaking more towards like the younger audience, don't be discouraged if you're in youth group and you're not finding that source of community, because youth group is really difficult because there's a lot of
pieces.
young people, and a lot of the times they're not really looking for that connection. And I know a lot of great people who are younger, like even Jackson, who came on the podcast. He's a senior right now, and he's just on fire for the Lord, unlike anything I've ever seen.
Right.
in someone so young. However, not everyone's like that. And
Fair enough.
so, like, kind of like what we were saying is, or what you were saying was that you didn't really find that community until you got in that college group.
Hmm.
And sometimes it can be like that. I found a lot of great friends in high school and in that time, but they weren't God fearing and
Right.
like the friends that I have now that are
Yeah.
in college. So,
Yeah, it's just a maturity level, honestly. That's
right.
also another thing is maturity is definitely a thing because when I like before I graduated early, I was in the high school small group and I was
Hmm.
I was in Jackson's small group, funny enough.
Really?
And yeah,
I
so
didn't know that.
the funny thing was that I wasn't supposed to be in their small group because I was way too old for them,
Mm,
but they stuck me with them anyways. So that was cool.
that's hilarious.
But yeah, so I was in a small group, but what ended up happening was like it wasn't for me, it wasn't like that pouring into me, or
Hmm.
it wasn't the community for me. Like it, yeah, that was just my thing with it. And that's why, but at the same time, I was holding on to it too,
Hmm.
because I was like, this is the only thing I have at this
Right.
point. So it's like, why move on to
Hmm.
the college group basically? And that's why mom's like, you gotta go.
Yeah.
You gotta go. So,
Moving on is a really good point because a
mm.
lot of the times God wants you to let go of some things, and if you don't let
Oh
go
yeah.
of them, it's not going to go well for you probably ever
No.
because I mean, like I was telling you about Franklin, Tennessee, God was obviously wanting me to come to Franklin and to move away from Seattle. But I was just so in love with the idea of clinging on to what I know
Yeah.
and what I knew. And I wasn't open to the new things. And the new things is where God really
Hmm.
showed his presence, is when he really just came in clutch in my life and I was able to really give myself fully to him.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think a lot of times about the, growing up in the old days, and there's a lot of great memories that I
Oh
cherish,
yeah.
but also I know that the memories that I'm making now with you and the group that we have now, I know that I'm going to look back in the future and remember these times, and
Oh yeah.
hopefully we'll all still be really close together because I do believe that relationships that are developed around the college age last for a lifetime because
Oh yeah, for
I've been
sure.
told
They
that
do.
before, and this is just something different. But
Yeah.
I look back and I'm just really grateful for them, but I'm no longer clinging to them and I'm no
Correct.
longer
Yeah.
desiring them. I'm rather desiring what God has for me in the
Yeah.
next couple years and the next steps of my life. And can you relate to that at all?
Oh yeah, absolutely. For sure. I mean, yeah, there's totally so many times where I'll look back and I'm like, dang, that was a good memory. Like that was a good experience I had. I'm not at that point anymore. Like
Right.
I've moved past that. Like that's something I guess with moving, like that's helped me was like
Mhm.
that the old ways is past and it's the new.
Mhm.
But at the same time, what I think was the started getting the worst for me because it was probably around the North Carolina, 'cause North Carolina moved, was that's when I started. No, I didn't get. I'm trying to think. I didn't get a phone until Texas, but that's when I started to cling on to friends. Was
Mm.
in North Carolina,
Yeah.
so I would like write to them or try to keep in touch with them. And then when I got the phone, it was so much easier to kind of cling to that past.
Right.
And then when we moved here, it was even more so because it's like, well, I got a relationship here that I'm trying to make happen. I have a best friend here, so I'm gonna keep this the way it is. So at first, it was like the first couple moves were easier, but it got harder as life went on because it's
Mhm.
like I got things like I have
Right.
this connection still here and
Right.
that I haven't broken, but it needs to be broken.
Mhm.
And so God's like, that's what like kind of talking going back to the point is like God's like, hey, you need to
Yeah.
kind of get away from that.
100%.
But obviously did not listen.
Obviously we don't listen to that.
Honestly, we do not listen to that.
Yeah.
And so he'll drag it like not even drag us, he'll let us go through the fire because it's refining us
Mhm.
basically. And then when at the very end, now you're like, oh, we should listen to you. And like God's like, I know what I'm talking about. You
Mhm.
just need to listen when I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
And then you're like, yeah, I'm kind of dumb sometimes. And then he's like, it's okay though.
Yeah. I
You're
still
here
love
now.
you.
I still love you. Yeah, that's the great thing about it. It's like you can be dumb, you can be stupid, but he still loves you
God
in the
still
very
loves you.
end. In the
Yep.
very end of it all.
I love it. So I like what you brought up about refining, and also yes, I did grab a sweatshirt because it's cold out here.
Just slight bit.
Just a slight bit,
Ooh, chill.
but I did like what you said about refining
Mhm.
and just how God refines us, and there are multiple different ways that God refines us, and I think three big things are experiences, friends, like in family and then also relationships. So you and I have both been in our fair share of different friendships and relationships. We both learned a lot, and I do believe that we've been refined by each experience. I don't believe that we leave friend groups and relationships the same. And I don't believe that we remain the same afterwards. So what are some ways that you've been refined through experiences like that?
I mean, for the best friend that I was talking about earlier, how we ended it was we were talking about theology and homosexuality, and how he thought that if you were ever homosexual, if you were ever gay or lesbian or whatever, you could never get to heaven. Like, you were condemned forever to hell. And I was like, that does not say that in the Bible. Like, yes, it's a sin, but it's not like the greatest sin where you can't be forgiven for it.
Right, exactly. It's just like any other sin. All sin is the same.
Exactly. So it was this massive argument where we were literally chilling, playing Apex in the very beginning, like 7:00, and then like started talking about it. We argued about it, and then we didn't go to bed till like 1 a.m.
Dang.
Like, we talked, debated, used scripture, all that kind of stuff. And at the very end of it, I could tell that he was frustrated with me because he knew I was right, but didn't want to say that because both of us are headstrong people. We didn't want to admit to each other that. And he didn't talk to me for like a couple months. And I was like, dude, I'm going to graduate soon. Do you want to come down? He's like, no, I'm not going to come down. I can't, man. Sorry. And then came down for my birthday finally. And then after that, it was like radio silence. Like, it was just too awkward. We wasn't the same. And it was like, from that, what I learned was that there are going to be times in people in their life where they're there for you for a certain period of time, but then it's going to be clear when you're supposed to leave, when like just stuff happens like that. So where I was just refined there is just being strong in my faith and like knowing for absolute certainty, like, this is right. This is what is true. And this isn't healthy for us to be like friends if you're going to be like that to me. Cause it was such a, it was not great.
Yeah. 100%. I've definitely been refined by, my friend group as well. And one thing that I've heard and have experienced in my life personally, I've experienced a lot of shame because of past mistakes that I've made. And the thing is, no one's perfect. And I believe that the mistakes that you make, they build you up, and they don't build you up in the moment, but in the long term, they mature you, they teach you things, you grow because of your mistakes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And no one is perfect. No one is going to be perfect. The only perfect human being was Jesus, and no one is ever going to live like that again.
No.
So when you approach a situation like a friend group or even a relationship with the idea that this person needs to be perfect, they have to had everything figured out by the time that they've been growing up before they met me, and then they have to keep it perfect with me. It's a flawed idea, and it's unrealistic because at that point you're just trying to have a relationship or a friendship with Jesus, which you can have, but it's unrealistic to put that on someone else.
Yeah, the expectations for that.
And I think I put a lot of expectation and a lot of shame on myself when I would look back on my past and realize, man, I've made a lot of really bad decisions, and I wish I could take them back, but I can't. But what I can do is I can lean into the forgiveness that God provides and that Jesus has provided for me, and I can acknowledge the fact that I'm not the same as I used to be.
Right.
And
exactly.
that God has changed me for the better, and He's continuing to change me for the better. It's not a one and done. It's a journey, and it's a path. It's a walk, and that's honestly been refining me. Is we've been mentioning our old friend groups, and I used to make really bad decisions with them. I used to make really bad decisions even like a couple of years ago, and so it's like I still make bad decisions now. Like, let's be honest. Like,
we're all human.
We're all human. We all make mistakes, and so but all those experiences and leaving friend groups, joining new friend groups, some people leaving, more people joining, all these things have been refining me, and they have been putting, it's like God's putting these people in my life at the perfect reason. Like, I mentioned I went through my breakup in January.
Right.
It was unhealthy and it needed to end, and God knew it, and we all knew it. And but one thing that God really put in my life afterwards was this group of guys, and my relationship with God really has been growing. I rededicated my life to Jesus
Yeah.
because I realized that I was walking
Whoop,
not
whoop.
with Him at all, and
Let's
it was.
go.
I know it was great. Shout out to Callan for
Yeah.
baptizing me. It was amazing.
Let's go, Cal. We love you.
And just from that experience, I started longing for more. Went to the Merge, like I've mentioned a lot on the podcast. Experienced this newfound faith and worship that I've never seen before. Sorry, I thought I was waiting for the sneeze. I was like, bless you.
Don't sneeze.
And I started longing for a deeper relationship with not only Jesus, but with people who loved Him and wanted Him as much as I did.
Right.
And God provided me with these group of friends, and it's been so amazing to get to experience that. We mentioned Evan and I mentioned on the last episode that we do worship nights now. Like one of us plays a guitar and we just worship, and it's something I've never done before with a group of friends. And it's honestly like God put these certain friends in my life at these certain times because He was refining me from my old self into this new self that was desiring these new things.
Yeah.
And it's so cool that God knows the desires of your hearts. And I don't know enough theology. I'm sure Nate does.
Yeah.
I don't know enough theology to really go into that, but I do know in this scenario that is very true. Is that God knew that I was longing for something more in my relationship with Him, in my walk with Him, and that my group of guys specifically, I love everyone in the group. The girls are amazing, but the guys specifically, God knew that I needed that, and He provided that, and it's just been so amazing. And I know you can relate because you're literally in our group,
right?
And it's such a fun time.
Yeah.
But do you have anything else to say on that? Just God refining you and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you've told me, we've talked about it a little bit too, where it was like the fire, where it's like purging out the old and bringing in the new, and making the finer metal.
Yep.
And you talked about that a little bit with me. Just I think Sunday was, but yeah, like God does that. He'll bring that fire. He'll bring the fire and bring the flame to purge out the old and purge out the dead to bring something new and new life into it. And I agree with the guys, just in our group specifically, it has been a drastic change from what it was last year to what it is now.
Right.
And it is so good to see that a good, godly Christian men coming together 6 a.m. for Bible studies.
Yeah.
It is early mornings for all of us,
mornings.
We are there. We're there. We're ready to receive the word and we're ready to talk. And now we're getting to the point where we can't even make it through the whole passage.
Yeah.
We're just talking about the whole thing or talking about the little bits and pieces. So, which is amazing to see that we need more time, not less time.
Right.
So,
100%. And it just goes back to a point that I've made multiple times already on these episodes, but that the group that we have now are no longer just Christian guys. They are men of God.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's just different. Like when you have people who like Christian people who have tattoos about verses and pictures of scripture on their bodies, but they don't have it written on their heart. That is a perfect example of the difference between what I grew up with Christian guy friends versus men of God who actually live out the scriptures.
That's
and
true.
They want to get closer with the Lord. They don't just want to proclaim that they're Christian and then live how they want. Like they want to live for Jesus.
Yeah.
And obviously we're all sinful. We all fall short. We're growing each other constantly. And I just think it's so cool. But I think that would be all the time that we have for today on this podcast.
Absolutely.
And first of all, everyone that's watching, thank you so much for watching. I know that it's different. My usual team isn't here to help, so there's no it's not like the usual thing. And obviously we're outside right now. It's late. It's dark outside. We're using a light that I haven't used in months. And
it's a cool environment.
It is. I kind of like it. It's different. And so we're really just trying to get these out, and it's going to look different, and it's not always going to be the same. But one thing that I talked to Nate about on our episode was that the consistency, I think, is what I want, and it's key. And
Always key in all these types of things. for sure.
100%, and I'm really passionate about this. And so even in the coziness of my church, where I usually do the episodes, to the cold outside,
Mhm.
it's every week. But thank you so much for coming on
Of course,
the
thank you for having
podcast.
me.
This isn't going to be the last time.
Oh no, this
I'm
will be
having
the last
everyone back
time.
on
Oh yeah,
eventually.
for sure.
And I thank you for your openness to just open up about your past and about your personal experiences, because I
Absolutely.
do think that the testimonies is was really powerful, and I'm sure that a lot of
Oh
the
yeah,
listeners and the viewers can attest to that. Is not only for me, it's beneficial to hear your testimony, but it's also beneficial for others. So
yeah,
I appreciate
absolutely.
you coming
Thank you.
on
Thank
doing
you so
that.
much again.
But
Yeah.
yeah, thank you, Hudson, and that's a wrap.
Alrighty.